Welcome back to Orion's From the Battlefield to the Boardroom podcast. If you've ever wanted to pursue a career completely different than your military occupation, but you aren't sure if you can succeed, today's episode is for you. In this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by Bruce Evans, Army veteran turned entrepreneur. After serving as a dental assistant in the Army, Bruce decided to join the restaurant industry and franchise sales, and was personally responsible for the sale of 450 Wingstop franchises in less than 5 years. Now Bruce is the VP of Franchise Development for Capriotti's Sandwich Shop and Wing Zone, and he shared some really great information and lessons learned during our conversation. Bruce discusses how his military experience shaped his outlook on life, and how that experience has helped fuel his success in the restaurant and franchise industries. If you have any questions about this episode or ideas for a future topic, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me an email at podcast@oriontalent.com.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Megan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. I don't know much about your background, only from what I've kind of briefly researched. So I'm really excited to share your story with me, but also with the listeners. So can
Awesome.
can you just set the stage by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, sure. I mean, when you turn 50, how far back do you want me to go? There's a lot there, but look, I grew up in Houston, Texas. I went to high school there, and then following high school, I joined the Army and did 4 years in the military. And it's interesting. I really, as a junior in high school, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Do I really want to go to college right now? Do I, just what's out there? And a recruiter happened to call one day, as they tend to do. And I said, this sounds like it might be interesting. So I spent some time, talking to the recruiter, and decided, the summer before my senior year in high school, that I would go ahead and, sign up for the Army. And I, ended up leaving actually 13 days after I graduated from high school. I was off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training.
Wow. So did you know that you were most interested in the Army, or you just kind of happened to go down that path because that was the recruiter that had called you?
I think it was two things. One, it was the recruiter that had called me. Plus, I had a cousin that was a 91 Delta over in Germany at the time, and so that's kind of why I decided to go with the Army.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So then let's talk a little bit more about that, about your military background. What
Sure.
did you do in the military? Deployments, anything noteworthy that you want to share about your time in the military?
Well, I, within a couple of days of being at Fort Jackson, I realized how sheltered my life had been. I had, I'd seen stripes about 5 or 6 times by the time I was a senior in high school. And, I thought that's what the Army was going to be like, and it didn't turn out that way. But seriously, though, I was I signed up to be a 91 Echo, which is a dental assistant. And, when you're at the MEP station and you take the ASVAB and they put a list of MOSs in front of you, I was actually, my cousin, really loved being a 91 Delta. And I was thinking, OR tech, that'd be kind of cool. But that job wasn't available at the time, for the time they wanted to send me to basic. So I said, dental assistant, I've had my teeth cleaned. I know what that is. So I'm going to go for that. And so I signed up for that. I ended up in, like I said earlier, at Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. In the summer in South Carolina it's not much different than the summer in Texas. It's humid, it's hot. And, I'm not sure how I made it, but I made it through basic training, and it was, then I ended up in Fort Sam, Houston for my, my MOS, studies, and really enjoyed that quite a bit. And it was really great. I still, there was a whole lot of uncertainty in my mind, like, kind of what did I get myself into? This is not what I thought it was going to be. but, over time I began to really become acclimated, to the Army, which, that's part of what they do to you in basic training, and really, really came to enjoy what I was doing quite a bit.
Well, I have a question for you to follow up. So you've mentioned a couple of times how different it was from what you were expecting.
Yeah.
What do you think stands out to you the most? Was it the physical, the mental? When you look back, what do you think was the most different than you expected aspect of joining the Army?
Well, I'll tell you the physical side, number one, I played football in high school. And so I was used to, doing that kind of stuff, but I think it's a combination of the physical and the mental that really, like they are to do is break you down and then build you back up again. It was a unique experience for me because I'd really never, gone to those depths as far as, mentally breaking down and then, being built back up again. And that was really in hindsight, that was a fantastic experience for me. But I will tell you that there was sort of a life-changing moment for me in basic training. You're doing these 4 a.m. PT, running around Fort Jackson. And I stepped in a pothole on one of our runs, and I sprained my ankle really bad. In fact, I ended up having to wear a boot for a while I was in basic. And I was really afraid, that I was going to have to repeat basic, all those kinds of things that start going through your head. Am I going to have to do this all over again? What the heck is going on? And I went to, our head drill sergeant, Sergeant First Class Johnson. I remember talking to him, and I'll never forget this moment. I think about it all the time, and I can see it clearly in my head. And I said, Sergeant Johnson, I don't know, if I'm going to be able to make this. I've got this boot on. I'm afraid I'm going to have to repeat basic, and, I'm trying to do everything I can. And he said to me, Evans, if you quit now, it's just going to be easier for you to quit for the rest of your life. Every problem that comes up, you're going to quit. And I come back to that all the time. And just learning how to persevere through difficulty and not giving up was really one of the biggest things I learned through my military experience.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great life lesson that, like you said, has just stuck with you. No doubt.
And trust me, there's so many times in my life where that comes up. And now I think about the same thing with my kids and try to instill that in them. Is just, you can't give up. Don't give up. Keep pushing through.
How old are your kids? And I'll let you answer that first, because I'm curious if any of them are interested in following in your footsteps and joining them in the Army.
Yeah. So my oldest is 18. He just graduated from high school. My middle, and it's my son. And then I have a daughter that's 16 and a younger daughter that's 13. And, my son has looked pretty seriously about the military, and he's still considering that as he moves on to college. But that's still in his mind about what he might want to do. And, my son is thinking, I want to go into special forces and, should I, one of the recommendations that they make there is that, you don't join until you're 21. And I forget what the MOS is now for where you go directly into special forces training from basic. And, in that they recommend 21 because you don't have the life lessons. You haven't experienced life. So you're not mentally or physically tough enough to make it through. So, I think that's great. I think that's a great lesson for him to understand that, I'm 18, but I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Even though he thinks he does, but that's a whole nother story. But, it's interesting. And I put things like that on my kids to make this is your decision to make. I'll give you my advice. I'll tell you my stories, but this is up to you. And I really try to put decisions like that on them and not try to make it for them.
And it's probably interesting for you too, just the fact that he is the age now that you were when you first joined the Army. And like you said, you don't have that life experience. So I'm sure now you looking at him and realizing that he's the same age you were, you think, wow, I was a kid when I joined.
Right. It is. It's a lot of times it's like looking at myself in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So it does a lot of things flash back to me today as he's, sort of 18 headed towards 19, that just trying to help him learn all the things that I should have known better about when I was his age. But
yeah. So speaking of when you were in the military, was it something that you had ever decided, once you got acclimated, have you ever thought, well, maybe I'll just stay in, or did you always kind of know that you wanted to get out and do something different?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I graduated from, and became a 91 Echo, my first duty station was at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to show up here. I'm going to go to the DENTAC and that's where I'm going to be. Well, no, I ended up in the 704th Main Support Battalion, which was a main support battalion for the 4th Infantry Division. So I wasn't working in a dental clinic every day. I was sewing canvas and doing vehicle maintenance and, all those things you do in a main support battalion, as well as field exercises. So that was an experience I wasn't expecting, but, it was great. Now, there did come a time where I was, working at the dental clinic a few days a week, and a tasking came to the dental clinic for me to go to Saudi Arabia at the, right at the end of Desert Storm. And so I actually took that tasking and processed myself out of Fort Sam Houston. And so my actually company commander didn't know about it until I had already processed everything, and he had to sign the final papers. And he was not really happy with that, but there wasn't anything he could do. I really wanted to go someplace else. I was tired of being at Fort Carson and thought, wow, Saudi Arabia, here we come,
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a few months, maybe close to 6 months in Saudi Arabia. And when I came back, I actually ended up at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, and was working at the oral surgery clinic there. And so that was a phenomenal experience. I spent about a year and a half there, really loved what I did. And I had it was a struggle for me, trying to decide, do I want to stay in? And I really spent a long time considering it because I just loved being there and felt like it was a great opportunity and was learning so much. But ultimately I decided, what I really want to do with my life is go and get my college degree. And, that was an interesting time in the Army as well, where, while the recruiter says, oh, you can go to college and take classes and things like that. Well, your first sergeant wasn't really willing to let you sign up to go to college classes when you're in a main support battalion
Mm-hmm.
at that time anyway. So I was coming out of the military with no college under my belt at all. So it had been 4 years since I had taken any classes or anything like that. But I ended up, I applied to the University of Texas in San Antonio. So when I, ETS'd out of the Army on June 13th, 1991, I moved from the barracks into the dorms. And that was another shocking experience to me because here I am at 21, almost 22 years old. And, everybody around me is 18 and have no life experiences whatsoever. So it was a little bit in reverse from when I went into the Army. But, that was a fantastic experience. I really felt like I was doing what I had sort of dreamed of doing. And, ended up making several moves from UTSA. And, I think the final decision, though, for me, in moving out of the Army, transitioning out, was really just doing what I kind of really wanted to do. And that was, go to college, get an education, and figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Well, so I'm curious, what did you go to college for? Because did you decide to do something? I know currently you're in a totally different field from what you did in the military. So when did you make that decision to pursue something different? What did you get your degree in?
So I have a BA in history with a focus on colonial Mexico.
Okay.
So that's like, I should have got a degree in pottery, so and doing what I'm doing right now. But I felt like for a long time that I wanted to be a professor or a teacher. And, I thought about, getting my master's and ultimately my PhD. And in fact, as I was graduating from college, I, began applying for, graduate school at various colleges, and I'd been accepted and was ready to go. What happened was I, about a year into my stint at University of Texas, San Antonio, I ended up moving back to Houston and deciding, well, I'm going to go over here, get a job. I've kind of missed my family for, the 4 or 5 years now that I've been gone, and thought, well, I'll move back home for a little while and maybe stay there and go to college. And so I moved home and I started working for a restaurant concept in Houston, Papa's Restaurants. I was at the Papacitos concept, and I was waiting tables. And I tell people I was such a bad waiter, they made me a manager. So, it was one of those things. And look, that was a phenomenal experience for me. It really, I had always loved, food and cooking and, those sorts of things. And it was really a really in-depth, sort of all-encompassing experience in the restaurant industry. And so, I went to I went to University of Houston for about a semester and a half, and then my GM got transferred to Dallas and asked me to go with him. And so I ended up moving to Dallas. I went to school at the University of North Texas, which is where I eventually graduated from. Worked my way up within the Papa's system. And it really got to a point where at that time, somebody either had to die or get fired for a guy like me to become a general manager. So I said, look, I got to find something else. And, my fiance at the time, which is now my wife, went on Monster and found an opening at a company called Wingstop that was based there in Dallas. And they were looking for a field support person, which, I knew everything you'd possibly know about the restaurant business at that time. And, thought, okay, this sounds pretty good. So I sent in my resume, and they called me in and said, hey, that job's been filled, but what about this? And that was, franchise sales. And I knew nothing about that at the time. And, they really didn't care. They wanted to, train me, and the rest is sort of history. I started at Wingstop when there were 22 restaurants open and maybe another 30 under development. And by the time I left, almost 10 years later, there were 450 restaurants open and another 200 or 300 under development at that time. So it was definitely a phenomenal experience. And, I think that I would have never had that experience had there not been somebody, sort of willing to take a chance on a guy that knew nothing about an industry like franchising.
Yeah, that is actually interesting, because do you consider yourself now to be part of the restaurant industry or franchising or both? Because it had to have been a little bit different. You're not the boots on the ground in the restaurant anymore,
right?
Or maybe you are. I'm not sure.
Right. No. I'm not. But look, I proudly consider myself part of the restaurant industry. I've never worked in anything, for the last 20 years or so. That's all I've done is restaurants. Even on the sales side, of selling restaurants, it's pretty handy to understand, the business and the operational side, and really being able to dig into that with prospective franchisees. So yeah, I still consider myself to be in the restaurant industry.
So when you say that you're responsible for franchise sales, are you just looking at potential people to expand the business throughout the United States, or how does that look for you, like your day?
Yeah. So in my role, I actually, not only manage sort of sales, but also work pretty in depth with real estate and the construction teams as well, and as well operations. So it's sort of a unique position in that, we're not just doing sales, but we're really involved with folks, not just recruiting new franchise partners, but also, working with them throughout their life cycle with the brand. And it it makes it very fulfilling when you're working with people on various parts of the process. Plus, it helps to ensure that all the promises that are made on the front end are fulfilled all the way through.
We work with a couple of different franchises actually, and we've seen that really our candidate database is mostly military veterans, and that's who we're dedicated to helping in their post-military career. And we have found that franchising is such a great fit for a lot of veterans because you get that business ownership element, and so many veterans are entrepreneurial, and that's what they're seeking to do when they leave the military. And so we found that it's such a great fit too. And I'm wondering, is that something with you, since you have a military background as well? Do you guys have any sort of veteran hiring initiative with franchises, or is that something that just you personally kind of seek out because you know that veterans are a good fit for an opportunity like this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's the systemic nature of franchising makes it very very easy for somebody from a military background to be able to come in and follow a system. That's what they've done their entire military career. So certainly that makes franchising very attractive for veterans and attractive for franchisors, bringing veterans into their system. And so look, it's a little bit of both for us. I mean, we certainly have initiatives for veterans, and we have a number of veterans that have taken advantage of that. We actually discount franchise fees by 15% for both brands that are part of our system, Capriati's and Wing Zone. And so we have a lot of veterans that are taking advantage of that today, and it's great. They make for great franchise partners.
So in your current role, I know you're going to be responsible for selling franchises.
Yep.
So finding new franchise owners. Are you guys expanding into new states, or are you already nationwide?
Oh, so we're actually in 22 states, but we're open to expansion nationwide. We have national distribution, so it makes it very easy for us to expand into new markets across the country. And so, having those lines of distribution solidified makes it very easy to expand. So we're open to expansion all across the country with both the Capriati's and the Wing Zone brand.
Very cool. So have you had any coaches or mentors in your career? It sounds like probably the people that you mentioned initially that took a chance on you and had you come into the restaurant industry from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. I've had mentors, really all along the way. And, whether it was in Papa's restaurants at Richard Chavez that really educated me on how to be successful in the restaurant business and restaurant operations. And then on the franchise side, getting involved with Wingstop. Jim Deering was the president of Wingstop at the time, and he had spent 20 plus years in the Army. I've been with the 10th Mountain Division, and we there was some kinship there because of that, but he also spent a lot of time educating me on the restaurant business. And then most recently, David Bloom, who is my direct report. David has been in the restaurant business for 40 plus years and restaurant operations and franchising and as a franchisor. So, I've really learned a lot over the last, 4 or 5 years working with David. So yeah, I've had some great mentors. And look, I think that, you're not always going to have somebody step up to the plate to become your mentor. And I think one of the ways for, veterans or anyone else to really be successful is sort of be curious, ask questions, seek out information. And where people are really lucky today versus, in 1991, when I got out of the military was, the internet. People can really access a lot of information there. And so I just believe it's important to ask questions and dig deeper. And, no matter what you think you don't know or what you don't know, find out more.
I think that's really good advice, because a lot of the people that I interview on this podcast, especially people like you who have been very successful in their post-military career, they always will mention the importance of a mentor. And we know that that's important. You always see articles on, Forbes and why that's important. And so everyone knows that it is. But I think that there's always this like agreement. Yes, we all know it's important, but how do I get one? So I like that you said you're not always going to have people that are, contacting you, volunteering to be your mentor. That's just not how it works. So
and look, conversely, Megan, there's a lot of people out there that would be great mentors that don't think they could be a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not asking those questions and prodding people and, building, because through that you're building relationships too, right? So there's that opportunity there for somebody to be a great mentor that, maybe never thought they could be.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I was thinking when you were talking about your mentors that I'm sure that you are also a mentor to other people.
Yeah, for sure. And didn't even realize it. But, today in my career, that's like my main focus every day is how can I help people be better? People that work with me, alongside me, what can I do to help them succeed and be more successful than me? That's what I want every day is for that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. So in addition to mentorship, are there any other resources that have helped you along the way? Whether it's, in your entrepreneurial journey or your journey to leadership, really books, blogs, podcasts, news articles, anything like that has been helpful to you that you would recommend to other veterans?
Well, look, I certainly think as you go through college or secondary education or whatever you get involved with post-military, or maybe even while you're in the military and you're taking college courses, one of the things that I kick myself about, because it was difficult, was just understanding, the financial aspect of business. So, taking at least one business class somewhere along the way to kind of help you understand certain things. But one of the great resources that I found, early on in my career was, just a simple book that's called How to Read a Financial Report by John Tracy. And I had no clue how to read a P&L, but as I progressed in my career, I had to learn how to do it. And that was a great resource for me to be able to, figure out, what all these numbers mean and what are all these line items, and, and making heads or tails of it. And that was something that I used to really, help me along the way. And then, look, I think for veterans, the International Franchise Association, their VetFran program, vetfran.org, is just a phenomenal resource for veterans. And look, when, a veteran that's wanting to get into business for themselves, I think they have to figure out what they love, right? What are you passionate about? And then find a franchise organization that fits that passion or is going to lead to increased passion for you. Because if it's just getting into business for the sake of getting into business, you're ultimately not going to be happy with that. You got to find something that kind of fits you and your family, and and is going to help lead to greater success for you. So, really spending time digging into, the business side of business and understanding what you want to do long term.
I'm curious about your career as you kind of progressed through the restaurant industry. Was there ever a time that you considered getting out and doing something different, or have you always been pretty steadfast in this is what you want to do?
I've always been pretty steadfast that this is what I want to do. There was a time in, the late 2000s that I was thinking about, getting out and getting my master's degree and being a teacher. And, that was short-lived. I really, it really came, Capriati's really sort of changed the course for me. When I was recruited to join the brand, and, met the team, the CEO, the president, tried the food and really, sort of fell in love with their mindset about franchising. And so, that I at this point in my career, I don't see myself going anyplace else. Like, I literally love what I do every day. I love the people I work with, and it's just a phenomenal team and family. So,
Well,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what's cool about what you currently do, I'm sure that whatever your motivation was behind seeing yourself as a teacher, I think you probably get some of that fulfillment through your current role as, in franchise sales, because you're getting to develop people, help them achieve things similar to what a teacher would be doing.
For sure. No doubt. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
So how would you say overall that your time in service prepared you to be so successful in the civilian world, even though you did something totally different? I'm sure there's some, underlying themes and soft skills and things that you did that have led to your success.
Yeah, I think it would be perseverance, is that I feel like, today that I can get through just about anything that comes my way. And if something comes my way that I don't understand or don't know about, then I'm going to, dig my heels in and do everything I can to learn everything about that I possibly can. But I certainly think that perseverance piece is really, what I learned from my time in the military. And look, it's really become sort of a life, motto, I guess, for me, or a word that sums up, what I try to do every day is just persevere. Mm-hmm. And that's really the big learning for me from my time in the military, along with so many other things that just, sort of help you in a daily routine to just, be better all the time.
Well, I'm curious about that. I mean, perseverance, that's obviously a big thing that would help anyone life lesson. But for you specifically, especially in the restaurant industry, I would think that that's something that has come in handy for you over the past year and a half or so with COVID. I'm sure that was kind of a little bit of a roadblock for you guys at first.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, look, but pre-COVID, I was traveling, 2 to 3 weeks a month. I was going all over the country. Our corporate headquarters are Las Vegas. And so I was there, I was other places meeting with prospective franchise partners. And then come, March 13th, I was, catching a flight back from Vegas thinking I was going back the following week. And, over the weekend, everything shut down and the world completely changed. But, having that, being part of a great team, really makes a big difference because we had already rolled out a lot of things over the course of the previous 2 years that, the unintended consequence was that it sort of set us up for success during COVID. But then also, no matter how well you're doing at work, you still got these thoughts in your head, in the back of your mind that, what about my family? Are we going to be okay? What's going to happen? How am I going to, continue to provide for my family? What if I lose my job? So you've got all of these things that are sort of, pecking away at you in the back of your head. And, I had to sit down and really, focus on what am I going to do to make sure that my family's taken care of and we maintain our job. So, we spent a lot of time talking as a family. We spent a lot of time preparing for things. We also spent a lot of time as teams at Capriati. So the franchise development team that includes real estate and construction, we were having daily calls and, we were having daily calls as larger groups, just talking through everything and, also talking with our franchise partners. And so it really, by the time we got to this point last year, things were really clicking away. COVID for us and I guess the scary part of COVID, of the unknowns, were really sort of, there was some uncertainty, but we weren't like freaking out that, something bad's going to happen. So yeah, for sure. Being able to put on that solid face, having a plan, knowing what you're going to do, all of those things, I think come with perseverance and being able to get over no matter what stands in your way.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say is your number one piece of advice for veterans entering the civilian workforce?
Well, I think my number one piece of advice would be to, never assume you're the smartest person in the room. Always be open to learning something new. Be curious. If you don't know something, do everything you can to absorb as much as you can on that subject. and really dig into it. And I think, just kind of summing that idea up would be, pursue what is meaningful to you. Don't just do something because it's a job or you're going to get paid for it, but find something that you really love and pursue it, make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's really great, because even the way that you ended up in the restaurant industry, you look at your military background, you would have never thought that would be your military background, then your degree.
Right.
You would have never thought that would be where you would end up. So I think that's a testament to, well, going back to your perseverance, but also just your ability to follow what your passions are instead of letting that get you down. Like, hey, I don't have any experience in the restaurant industry, I can't do that.
Right.
Right. I think that's, you saying that is a great testament to just look at your own background, that you practice what you preach.
Yeah. And look, I'll tell you, there was a time where I had been a kitchen manager in the restaurant business for so long that, there's nobody that wanted to give me a chance to cross over into some sort of business field. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of similarities there with folks coming out of the military, that have done things that they don't think are going to transfer. They don't know if they're going to transfer, but I think that goes back to really find what is going to be meaningful for you. What am I going to do that's going to give me pleasure, make me happy, or help me to be more successful? And look, it's the same with having kids, right? Do something that's going to make you happy. Don't just get a job and do that just because you're going to make some money. If you're not happy with what you're doing, you're going to be disappointed somewhere along the way. Disappointed, burnout, unhappy. So find something meaningful and do it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a problem that a lot of veterans face when they're, kind of either first entering the civilian world or have been in it for a while, is that, I'm sure you can relate to this, you come from the military where you have this strong sense of purpose that's kind of woven throughout most aspects of your life, because it starts with your job. And so people are always seeking that when they leave, like, how can I find something that is going to be, as rewarding as what I've been doing?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Bruce, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say to kind of wrap this up? Anything you want to share or any takeaways?
Look, this has been you really made me step back and think about all the things that I experienced in the military. So, there were a lot of flashbacks going on over the last couple of weeks, thinking about, participating on this podcast with you. And so it's been really great, going back and thinking about those memories and thinking about what's gone on over the last, 30 years now. So I really enjoyed that aspect of preparing for this interview. But look, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you, having me on today. And look, if there's anything that I can do for anybody that is listening to you out there that wants to ask me questions, they can contact me at, bruce.evans@capriottis.com. And it's pretty simple to get in touch with me, but, feel free to reach out with any questions that you have about anything that you're thinking about.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Orion's From the Battlefield to the Boardroom podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or SoundCloud so that you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you, so if you have any feedback, please send me an email at podcast@oriontalent.com. Our goal is to help all military job seekers through their transition and beyond, so make sure you share our show with your friends. See you next time.